Good morning to all of you. Today we will discuss the pecuniary bias. My dear students, the pecuniary bias arises when the adjudicator has some monetary or financial interest in the subject matter of the dispute. It is believed that a direct pecuniary interest, howsoever small or insignificant, will disqualify a person from acting as a judge. The judicial approach in this regard is unanimous and decisive that any financial interest, howsoever small it is, would vitiate administrative action. We can take reference of an English case, Dimes versus Grand Junction Canal, decided by House of Lords in 1852, to see the approach of English judiciary in this context. In Dimes' case, a public limited company filed a case against a landowner. The subject matter involved the large financial interest of the company. The case was heard by Vice Chancellor and he gave the decision in favor of the company. The appeal was filed before the Lord Chancellor, who affirmed the decision of Vice Chancellor. Then further appeal was preferred to House of Lords on the ground that Lord Chancellor was not qualified to hear the appeal against the decision of Vice Chancellor. It was contended by the appellant that Lord Chancellor had a significant number of shares in the company and the decision would have been to the significant financial benefit to the judge. It was held by House of Lords that Lord Cottenham was disqualified from sitting as a judge in the case because he had an interest in the suit. It is important to mention here that there was no inquiry by the court as to whether a reasonable man would consider Lord Cottenham to be biased, and also no inquiry as to the circumstances which led to Lord Cottenham sitting. The observation of Lord Campbell is very important for us to know the approach of English judiciary in regard with the cases of pecuniary bias. Lord Campbell states, "No one can suppose that Lord Cottenham could be in the remotest degree influenced by the interest he had in this concern, but it is of the last importance that the maxim that no man is to be a judge in his own cause should be held sacred, and that is not to be confined to a cause in which he is party, but applies to a cause in which he has an interest." He further says that it will have a most salutary influence on inferior tribunals when it is known that his High Court of last resort, in a case in which Lord Chancellor of England had an interest, considered that his decree was on that account the decree not according to law and was set aside. This will be a lesson for all inferior tribunals to take care not only that in their decree they are not influenced by their personal interest, but avoid the appearance of laboring under such influence. Friends, in the case of R versus Hendon Rural District Council, which was decided in 1933, the King's Bench Court of England quashed the decision of Planning Commission on the ground that one member of the commission was an estate agent and he was acting for the appellant to whom the permission was granted. The court observed that the disqualification will not be avoided by non-participation of biased member in the proceedings if he was present when the decision was reached. In India, the case of NBGGY versus Assistant Collector, which was decided by the Supreme Court of India in 1965, is important in this area of administrative law. In this case, Justice Gajendra Gadkar recused himself from the bench because he was a member of cooperative society which was a party in this case. After that, the Chief Justice reconstituted the bench which gave this judgment. We know that rule against bias is a great humanizing principle to invest law with fairness, to secure justice and to prevent miscarriage of justice. And the present case attempts to achieve the same objectives by answering the questions as to what qualifies as bias and whether actual partiality or actual bias needs to be proven. In this attempt, it seems that the judges adopted the high standards of fairness and to save the basic principles on the foundation of which the rule against bias stands, that justice should not only be done but should also be seen to be done. In the case of J. Mohapatra and Company versus State of Orissa, which was decided by the Supreme Court of India in 1984, it is a decision of a textbook selection committee that was in question and came for consideration of the Supreme Court in a special leave petition on the ground of bias, that some of the members of selection committee were also authors of books which were considered for selection. The Supreme Court observed that no man shall be a judge in his own cause is a principle formally established in law, which is based on the principle that justice should not only be done, but it must be seen to be done. And justice can never be seen to be done if a man acts as a judge in his own cause or is himself interested in its outcome. According to the court, this principle applies not only to judicial proceedings but also to quasi-judicial and administrative proceedings. The Supreme Court further states that to say that the author member is only one of the members of the assessment subcommittee is to overlook the fact that author member can subtly influence the minds of the other members against selecting books by other authors in preference to his own. It can also be that the books by some of the other members may also have been submitted for selection, and there may be a quid pro quo, or in other words, you see that my book is selected and in return I will do the same for you. In either case, when a book of an author member comes up for consideration, the other member would feel embarrassed in frankly discussing its merits. Such author member may also be person holding a high official position whom the other member may not want to displease. The court says whether they were so influenced or not is, however, a matter impossible to determine. According to the opinion of the court, it is not, therefore, the actual bias in favor of author member that is material, but the possibility of such bias. And therefore, all these considerations require that an author member should not be a member of such committee or subcommittee. Though the court did not affect any selections already made because of the specific facts and circumstances of this case, at the Supreme Court of India issued some important guidelines for general application in this regard. The important guidelines on the issue are: number one, committee should not consist merely of government officials or have a preponderance of government officials on it. For government officials, with few exceptions, have by and large only administrative experience. In addition to the government officials, the committee should also consist of men eminent in the particular fields of knowledge for which the books are to be selected. Non-official members should not be appointed as a matter of political considerations or on party lines, but should be appointed only on merit. No member of the committee, a book written or edited by whom is submitted either by him or his publisher for approval or selection should continue to remain a member of the committee. If he is non-official member, he should submit his resignation from the committee on this ground. If he is the governmental official, he should intimate to the government or the authority appointing him the fact that a book written or edited by him has been submitted for approval or selection, and the government or concerned authority should substitute in place of such member another member. No publisher of book or his representative should be appointed as member of the committee or be allowed to remain present at or participate in deliberations of the committee. In the case of Visakhapatnam Cooperative Motor Transport Limited versus G. Vangaru Raju, the Madras High Court quashed the decision of the collector, who in his capacity as the chairman of Regional Transport Authority granted the permit in favor of a cooperative society of which he was himself a member. Similarly, Andhra Pradesh High Court had no hesitation to quash the order of Regional Transport Authority when the permit was granted by authority to one of its members. We can also make a reference to the case of R versus Wo State Metropolitan Stipendiary Magistrate decided in the year 2000, in which the House of Lords laid down the law in this regard and opines that rule against bias has two very similar but not identical implications. Number one, if a judge has financial or proprietary interest in the case or is a party to the suit, he is automatically disqualified to act as a judge without investigation of real likelihood of bias or suspicion of bias unless he makes a voluntary disclosure. Number two, if a judge has no proprietary interest and is also not a party to the case, but his conduct or behavior give rise to a suspicion of bias, then there is no automatic disqualification unless a real likelihood is proved. On the basis of our discussion over the cases decided by English courts and Indian Supreme Court and the high courts on the matter of personal and pecuniary bias, it is evident that judicial tendency is to apply the test of reasonable suspicion of bias in determining the personal or pecuniary bias and to disqualify the adjudicator or the person making the decision on the same ground. It seems that courts have applied this approach just to maintain the higher standards of fairness and to ensure that the justice is not only done, but it is manifestly and undoubtedly seen to be done. In the next lecture, we will take up the subject matter bias for our discussion. Thank you.